Welcome to Moving Mattresses and 3-inch Heels. I'm Julia Jordan, and today I'm going to be starting a mini series called Debrief and Bare Feet, where I recap the most recent 4 episodes. So, welcome to Debrief and Bare Feet, Part 1, Episodes 1 through 4, Reclaiming Ourselves, Mind, Body, and Soul. Welcome to Moving Mattresses and 3-inch Heels, celebrating women and the many hats and shoes they wear. Here we will dive into the ups and downs of womanhood with humor, heart, and wisdom, empowering you every step of the way. I'm Julia Jordan, and I'm thrilled to partner with you on this journey. Now you may be asking yourself, what the heck does moving mattresses and 3-inch heels mean? Well, it's literal. I was literally moving a mattress in 3-inch heels, my favorite pair no less. And I came to the realization that not only can women do anything, we do everything. We're going to focus on 5 pillars: metabolism, meditation, mental health, menopause, and I would be remiss if I didn't add the 5th, medical. It occurred to me when I was putting these metrics together, all 5 of the words do something that most women do not, and that is start with M-E. Start with me. So I'm going to amend my previous statement. Women can do anything, and we do everything, except prioritize ourselves. But it's time to. It's time for us to start with me. If you're ready to laugh, learn, and leap into a healthier, happier you, hit that subscribe button and join our wellness family. Let's go on this journey together of self-consideration as we discover how to start with me. Hi, everyone. Today we are not putting on our 3-inch heels. Instead, we're staying in our bare feet as I review episodes 1 through 4 and highlight the best of each conversation. I feel so fortunate to have been able to have conversations with all of these dynamic women and bring them to you. And I will tell you that each one of them lives their brand, and that includes empowering women. And I know that firsthand. Now, if you recall, episode 1 was called The Strength in Not Settling, and my guest was Shannon Wilkerson. Episode 2 was How Our Adrenals Can Make or Break Our Metabolism, and my guest was Betsy Markle. Episode 3 was Realigning Our Minds with Dr. Vanessa Calderon, and episode 4 was Harnessing Our Hormones for a Happier, Healthier Life, and my guest was Brie Weiselman. Let's start with episode 1, The Strength in Not Settling, with Shannon Wilkerson. Shannon is a 4-time published author and a passionate advocate for personal and professional development. Shannon, who specializes in coaching single mothers and shares her powerful insights on not settling for less, embracing vulnerability, and pushing through fear to chase our dreams. We discuss that in one area in particular, we as women tend to settle, and that is the relationship with ourselves. By putting ourselves last, we run out of energy, we run out of time, and end up not doing for ourselves and letting ourselves down. One thing that I really appreciated that Shannon said is, and let me get this quote right, it's easy to lose sight of who we are and what our dreams are when we're in the moment of doing so much. So it is so important that we remember why we are pursuing our dreams and our goals in the first place. So how do we do that? Well, we do that by bringing ourselves back into focus. And we ask ourselves these questions. First, what is at stake? What happens if I don't do it? And what happens if I actually do it? What will I gain? There is so much power in not settling. And Shannon says settling is rooted in fear. She says that not starting at all or quitting really comes down to fear. So what she recommends is to do it scared. Do it scared. Shannon tells her clients, and I think this is a great reminder for all of us, she says, right now, there is someone making a really good living. It's something that you are better at. So step out and do it scared. We already have inside of us everything that we need. If we fail, get back up and do it again. She said a big key is not going alone. We need to ask for help, build our community, and surround ourselves with good people. She also says to learn the yes-no balance. It's okay to say no or not now. If it's uncomfortable, we need to remind ourselves the cost of not saying no in that moment. We have to be consistent, and eventually it will get easier. Shannon pointed out there is a big difference between not waiting and being patient. If you can do it, then do it. That's the not waiting part. If you can control that aspect of your life and all you have to do is step out and do it, don't wait. The patience comes in when it's something that we desire, that it's a goal, but yet it's out of our control. Be discerning, because that can be sometimes that we're our most vulnerable. So don't settle because something is good enough that came along. And in the meantime, live life. Don't miss out on living life while waiting for an event or some type of permission. Also, she says, keep in mind, this is us being a good example and an inspiration to our children, particularly our daughters. We are teaching our daughters that it is okay to take up space, to be heard, and be unapologetically ourselves. And you know what? We need to take our own advice. Shannon said if negativity and insecurity are holding us back, we need to replace our negative inner dialogue with positive inner dialogue. In fact, she said, write down the negativity and then rip it up. Rip that piece of paper up and throw it away. And then get another piece of paper and replace all the negativity with the positive word that you truly are and aspire to be. It is who you are at your core. And I'll tell you, there's so many takeaways from this conversation, but for me, the biggest one was do it scared. You have been watching me do it scared in real time. I mean, the first time I pressed record to do my trailer podcast, I was terrified, but I clicked the record button anyway. And I will tell you, the fear went away. The doubt goes away. Now, the naysayers and the noise, they may not go away, but here's the great news. You stop hearing it. So remember, fear is temporary, regrets forever. So do it scared because the fear will go away. And what takes over is a sense of accomplishment and a clear path to your goal. Now, if you are interested in learning more about Shannon Wilkerson, including her latest book, Girl Go For It, we will have all her contact information in the show notes. Now on to episode number 2, how our adrenals can make or break our metabolism with Betsy Markle. Betsy is a registered dietitian and holistic nutritionist, as well as the co-founder of an innovative program called Metabolism Mojo. Well, to start, I don't think most of us realize we have a damaged metabolism, but the odds are we do. And that stems from stressed adrenals. So we have to identify that we even have stressed adrenal and a damaged metabolism to begin with. So how do we do that? Betsy recommends first starting by taking inventory or an assessment of our daily life and ask ourselves, in general, do I feel stressed? Do I feel overwhelmed, anxious, frustrated? Am I overthinking, focusing on the negative? And if our answer is yes to most or all of them, the odds are good we have adrenals that are stressed, which means more than likely we have a damaged metabolism. Now, one of the biggest physical signs that you have stressed adrenal or you are burned out, which, by the way, I need to back it up a little bit. Betsy points out that stressed adrenals and being burned out are two different things. Stressed adrenals comes first, and then burnout happen, which is wired but tired. I can do more. I can do more. So pay attention to that type of lifestyle. But Betsy says one of the biggest physical signs of stressed adrenals or burnout is not being able to drop weight pretty much no matter what you do. And also, we tend to have inflammation. You can feel that in your fingers and just that overall puffy, yucky. So then how do we repair our metabolism? Betsy says we have to heal our metabolism by nurturing it back to life. She says, take a holistic approach. I want to step back. Holistic's used over so many industries, finance, fitness. So I just want to step back and say, holistic is one of those words that's so completely overused that people that use it don't even know what it means, and it's lost all value. What holistic means is very simple. It means the whole thing. So we look at everything in its entirety. So when Betsy says holistic, she means she looks at the whole aspect of your life, and you nurture every aspect of your life, not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally, spiritually as well. In short, she says be kind to ourselves and our bodies. Now, we can start nurturing ourselves first by looking at our lifestyle, look at our habits, eliminate the stressors, and implement habits that calm down our stressors. Our daily routine is extremely important. Food is not the only important aspect of our daily lives. So when we review our eating habits, we also have to look at not only what we eat, but when we eat. The timing of when we eat is extremely important in order to maintain a steady blood sugar. And I have an episode coming up soon about blood sugar that's really informative. And anyway, what Betsy also says is skipping meals, particularly breakfast, is very hard on our bodies. She also said, and a lot of experts say this, don't have coffee on an empty stomach because it increases our cortisol, which is a stress hormone. Energy drinks are a big no. Betsy says it is also very important to stay hydrated and pay attention to food intake. If you have a sensitivity, for example, if you get tired or your stomach bothers you after you eat something, the food that is the culprit more than likely is something you're going to want to eliminate from your diet. Betsy also says to have a daily flow and balanced meals and use food properly. Food is meant to be restorative and for fuel and not really for anything else. So if we have a healthy routine that we implement that becomes habit, therefore automatic. So when life throws us curveball, our routine, our self-care is not neglected. This lifestyle should feel good. It should be our home base. Betsy says it's extremely important to stay organized. That eliminates stress in all aspects of our life, but also including in our meal planning. And Betsy and I had quite an in-depth conversation about making meal planning simple and as opposed to stressful. Finally, Betsy stresses the importance of connection. In fact, connection is so important. It's been her word of the year for 3 years in a row. She says to connect with our body, our mind, the earth, our heart, the people that bring us joy, and remember to have fun. And this is all so we can nurture ourselves and our metabolism back to life. And I'll tell you, for me, learning that I have a damaged metabolism was so enlightening, and that we have to nurture ourselves inside and out in order to heal. By being kind to ourselves with organization to alleviate stress and connecting with ourselves to create a life that serves us. If you're interested in learning more about Betsy or her program, Metabolism Mojo, we will have all her contact information in show notes. And here we go on to episode number 3, Realigning Our Mind with Dr. Vanessa Calderon. Let me tell you a little bit about Dr. Vanessa Calderon. She is a board-certified emergency medicine physician, also a Harvard graduate, and a transformative master coach. This podcast, in short, was about untangling who we have been told we are so we can become who we truly are. A big reason why we have been getting unintended results is because we are accommodating our conditioning, society, our trauma experience, any or all of those things. And here's the thing about trauma and abuse, for that matter. Society would like us to believe it isn't as extreme or as damaging as it really is. And what do? We end up being accomplices because we allow it to stay hidden and pretend we're okay. We think we're protecting ourselves, but in fact, we're protecting the culprit, our abusers. And this is a conversation I want to have, but I want to put a pin in it right now because it deserves way more time than this episode will allow. We will talk about this in an upcoming episode. So already, this is a lot to untangle, especially in a world where things that are abuse and trauma aren't acknowledged as abuse or trauma. So it's close to impossible to reconcile because we don't even realize we've experienced trauma. Now, what Dr. Calderon wants us to do first is take a look at what triggers our anxiety, our stress, or being overwhelmed. So we are aware of that trigger, and then we can start to understand why. The reason being is our conscious mind, she says, plays a very small role in our decision making and action. She said, think of a triangle. The conscious mind is just the tip. The majority of what happens is underneath our conscious mind, in our subconscious brain. And under our subconscious brain is our autonomic brain, and that's where habits live. So we do things automatically with no or very little thought. Dr. Calderon reminds us that habits are formed within 14 to 21 days. So in order to become our true self, we have to be intentional and create new habits, which can be really uncomfortable because we are literally rewiring our brain. And our brains are programmed to keep us safe and for survival. So any discomfort is going to be met with some type of resistance. So what we need to do first is take a step back and ask ourselves, am I getting the results in my life that I want? And if the answer is no, it typically goes back to the conditioning and trauma and the habits we formed to survive. And now they live in the autonomic brain. So we end up with feelings of inadequacy. No matter what we do, never good enough, which in turn causes that stress, anxiety, and overwhelm. One of my favorite parts of this conversation, and it actually was hard for me to pick a favorite, is when Dr. Calderon taught us how to identify stress. First, by pausing and recognizing what is our body physically doing during stress. For example, I clench my jaw tightly, and sometimes my eyes start to water. Dr. Calderon says she balls up her hands into fists. So let's stop here for a minute and think about, what do you do and what does your body do under stress? Think about that. The second step Dr. Calderon taught us was to think about what triggers the stress, because it's usually an underlying value that isn't being met. Do you feel like you have no control, aren't being heard, aren't being respected? You weren't perfect. And perfectionism is a big one for women because we always have to do more, be better, and not to say no, and to be accommodating. Now, third, once we are aware of our physical reaction and identify the trigger, we can pause, reset, and bring ourselves back to who we truly are. I love that Dr. Calderon explains stress as pushback against tradition, conditioning, and the old way of doing things. In other words, stress is telling us we want to say no more. It's actually reminding us we need to tell the external forces and the lies to shut up. It's telling us to stop lying to ourselves and stop buying into all the nonsense. And fourth, we need to come back to center by relaxing our bodies and our minds, because this is good. This is a good one, because it is impossible. It's literally impossible to be stressed and relaxed at the same time. And what Dr. Calderon taught us is a breathing exercise called 4x4 breathing or box breathing. You inhale for 4 seconds, and then you exhale slowly for 4 seconds. You inhale again for 4 seconds, and then you exhale slowly for 4 seconds. When we do this, it turns the fear center in our brains off. The exhale causes our relaxation response. And as she put it, our parasympathetic nervous system turns on, and our sympathetic nervous system, or our stress response, turns off, and our vagus nerve is then turned on. Last, and certainly not least, we discussed self-reclamation, reclaiming ourselves, our true self, starting with celebrating ourselves by literally putting our hand on our heart and acknowledging what we have done, no matter how small. Now get this, the action of putting our hand on our heart is powerful. Here's what it does. Number one, it heals the wound of receiving. It heals the wound of receiving. Women in particular are not supposed to receive and only give. Otherwise, we are a horrible thing called selfish. And that is the wound it is healing. Now, number two, there's a physical response. It secretes oxytocin, which is a feel-good hormone, but it also relaxes our heart muscle. It's actually good for our hearts. It's cardioprotective. And three, it creates intimacy with ourselves. We feel connected. Dr. Calderon recommends starting our day by putting our hand on our heart. Now do it with me, saying, "Good morning, Julia. I love you." So you would say good morning in your name and that you love yourself. And it might feel funny at first, but it's healthy. And then at the end of the day, she says, as you're transitioning from our work and responsibility to our downtime, to put our hand on our heart again and celebrate what you did that day. Tell yourself you did a good job at this or that, but also let yourself off the hook. If you didn't get something done, it's okay. And this is how we start to reclaim our true, authentic selves and stop believing the lies of not good enough. For me, when Dr. Calderon expressed and explained that stress and frustration are a pushback from the old way of doing things, that gave me a brand new perspective. Her teaching to identify stress with our physical response and stopping to do the breathing really helps. After that, I asked myself, what do I want to say no to? And it's been life-changing, as has putting the hand on my heart habit, which I highly encourage everyone to incorporate into their daily routine. And after you have, I would love to hear from you. Let me know how it's helped you. If you are interested in learning more information about Dr. Calderon or her program called The Journey, which is mastering your mind, emotions, stress, and time, we will have all her contact information in the show notes. And last, but certainly not least, episode number 4, Harnessing Our Hormones for a Happier, Healthier Life with Brie Weiselman. Brie is a licensed primary care provider and an expert in hormone balance. For the last 14 years, she has paved the way for quality, functional care, working with thousands of clients across the globe, empowering them with a personalized map for understanding and transforming their health. I have to tell you, after this podcast dropped, the majority of the comments I had gotten are from women saying, I didn't have any idea my symptoms were from menopause. And that's one of the things that Brie and I talked about. Physical manifestations that are not on anyone's radar. And more importantly, we don't know to connect menopause to those symptoms. For example, joint pain, muscle weakness, and here's one that'll get you, a diminishing sense of the smell. Did you know that you can lose an acute sense of smell with low estrogen and menopause? Yeah, neither did I, until it happened to me. And the list just goes on and on of symptoms that no one talks about. And they're not marketed to, because what marketers focus on our energy, sleep, and weight loss, because those are the things that sell. And the only things that society really has allowed us to talk about when it comes to menopause are hot flashes and brain fog, but those are only two of so many symptoms. Now, thankfully, menopause is having a moment. Really, it's having a movement. It's being talked about more now than ever before in the past, but it needs to be talked about more because women need to understand what is happening to us so we can be proactive instead of reactive, so we can be prepared, and not just physically, but also mentally, emotionally, and spiritually too, for the next stage of our lives. Brie focuses on perimenopause for the reasons I just mentioned, so we can be proactive. I just mentioned, but she reassured. Now, Brie also reassures us that it's not too late if we're in menopause or even post-menopause. There are still solutions. So let's take a step back for a second. If we think about when we were in our 30s, that's when, or if you're in your 30s, you're doing it now. That's when we realize that we have choices in life, and it's empowering. But we also have to realize that there's fertility choices that we have to make too if we want children, and then figuring out what's the best option for us. The other thing too, Brie said, she is also seeing women as young as 32 in perimenopause. Now, an early stage of perimenopause is sudden weight gain and an inability to lose it. But when someone is that young, we wouldn't normally correlate that with anything having to do with perimenopause or menopause. So we want to keep having these conversations to educate women so we know what to expect and how to correlate symptoms to perimenopause or menopause. And a big part of our experience and our symptoms is our lifestyle choices. The things that we can control, like what we eat, if we're getting enough sleep, are we exercising? But another big part, Brie says, is the environmental things that we cannot control, like toxins in the air. Now, of the things we can control, like choosing a healthy lifestyle, that's key. It will help us in general, but specifically as we move into perimenopause and then into menopause. As we transition into these stages, there is a microbiotic shift where we have less ability to be sensitive to insulin. As progesterone and estrogen decrease, it also may create cravings and an inability to process food properly, which causes weight gain, fatigue, brain fog, and other symptoms. And Brie explains one of the best things we can do for that is to train our bodies to have metabolic flexibility. Well, what is metabolic flexibility? In short, metabolic flexibility is our bodies burning fuel differently, moving from burning glucose to burning ketone for fuel. One of the things that Brie said we can do is eating healthy fatty food like salmon, for example. But she said the key 4 steps are: first, hormonal balance; second, detox and gut health; 3, supporting our mitochondria; and 4, building muscle mass and DHEA. Now, Brie goes into detail about all of these areas in the podcast. One thing I did ask her specifically about was building muscle mass, because that has affected me in menopause as well as a lot of other women who, like me, had no idea to connect it to menopause until I started doing my own research. And Brie explained that the majority of our mitochondria is in our muscles because that's where the majority of our energy is. So the more muscle we have, the more mitochondria we have. So how do we build muscle mass? First, hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, which Brie discusses further in the podcast. And that's something that each of us should discuss with our healthcare providers. Number 2 is weight training, specifically progressive overload training. And 3, creatine. Brie's a huge fan of creatine, and she did more on the You may gain some water weight initially, maybe about 5 pounds, but she said it should also go away in about 2 weeks. Number 4 is adequacy of eating. I find that an interesting term. I never heard that before. Adequacy of eating, specifically getting enough protein and the timing of when we eat our meal and the timing of when we eat our carbs. For example, when we are at our most active, like working out, that's when we should be eating carbs before and within 2 hours after we work out. Like a banana, for example, would be perfect. Now, with any program or diet or workout regimen, you always want to talk to your healthcare provider before making the decision and getting clearance. Brie is also someone that can help you. She has several incredible programs. And I will tell you, speaking with Brie gave me hope. And I want to give you hope. And I want to give you hope in perimenopause and menopause because they're both hard, but it's not the end of the world. There are things we can do to prepare, and there are things we can do to respond to mitigate the difficulty. And remember, you're not alone in this. We can actually do this together. We can actually harmonize our hormones. They are working for us instead of it always feeling like we're working for them for a happier, healthier life. And as I talked about in my trailer episode, this is an opportunity for our new era. This is our second act. And to me, a second act is a significant transition from life as we know it to life as we create it. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Brie and her program, the Reverse Age Method, we will have all her contact information in the show notes. To wrap things up, first and foremost, I want to thank each of my guests. They are truly amazing women. What I realized when I was listening back to these episodes was that all four of these incredible women are saying the same thing in a different way with a different platform. And that is this. If we are paying attention to ourselves, become more aware of our body and our mind and our habits, we can identify the areas where we are being harmed or even sabotaging ourselves and create new habits in those places so we can live as our most authentic self and we can reclaim who we truly are, mind, body, and soul. Thank you for joining me today on Moving Mattresses and 3-inch Heels. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on our latest tips for living your best life. Until next time, stay fabulous and remember, your wellness journey matters. Self-care is a necessity and it does not require an apology. I'll see you soon.